Okay, so today let's talk about Syria. The crisis in Syria continues. This all started in 2011. It was a US proxy war the entire time, despite everyone trying to claim that it was, pro-democracy protests and then a civil war. It was nothing of the sort. It was fueled entirely from outside by the United States, by its Western European allies, and also its allies in the Middle East. That would be countries like Saudi Arabia and Qatar, and also Turkey at the time was a very enthusiastic supporter for the proxy war, and in many ways still is. Turkey is still really a key problem in resolving the Syrian crisis. And now I'm looking at recent news because I check on it from time to time, even though the war has really wound down. It's still not quite over. And Syria still has a lot of problems. So this is an AP article. It's titled, Syria Temporarily Cuts Supplies of Fuel to Meet Shortages. And this is all about sanctions, the US sanctions on Syria, and also the US sanctions on Iran. Now, what's going on here is the US cannot win its proxy war. They were unable to overthrow the government in Damascus. What they wanted to do was do to Syria what they did in Libya, which was pretty much wipe the country off the map, just reduce it to fractured, warring factions, and use it as a springboard to then attack Iran next. And it didn't work out. So the US is illegally occupying eastern Syria. Most of western Syria, all the most populated areas in Syria are under the government's control with the help of Russia, also with the help of Iran, and Idlib and some surrounding areas in the north are being controlled by Turkey and, of course, the US-backed terrorists. And that's what they are, they're terrorists. And that's what they were from the very beginning. They might have had like some left liberal-leaning students or youth groups or something doing some, very superficial protesting, but most of that was the Muslim Brotherhood. And the Muslim Brotherhood, of course, fights side by side with Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State. And don't let anyone try to tell you otherwise, because it really is as simple as that. And if you read the Western media, they've admitted it all throughout the years, and you'll still see it somewhere. If you go down in the article, you'll still see it somewhere. But this is about the US being spiteful. They cannot defeat Syria. They cannot overthrow the government. So what they're going to do is make the country suffer. These sanctions are designed to destroy Syrian civilization, basically, making the civilian population suffer. And of course, this is a crime against humanity when you do this, when you're deliberately causing suffering to people. The fuel shortage will impact everything. It'll impact deliveries of goods all across the country. It impacts the economy of every type of business, whether they need to use fuel directly or not. And so this is a very deliberate and systematic attempt by the US to destroy the Syrian government, the economy, and crush the people in Syria through economic pressure. And if they cannot overthrow the government, they will make it suffer, just like they did to Iraq until the 2003 invasion, when they finally just destroyed everything and killed everybody. So that's what's going on in Syria. I want to show you some other resources that I use when I check on Syria from day to day. I use a website called Syria Live Map. And I'm going to have this on the screen for you so you can see it. Syria Live Map, you got to be careful because you got to check what the sources are. But what it is it's a daily, even throughout the day, it's updated. It has a little timeline on the side bar that you can scroll up and down on. And then you can see the map. The red is controlled by the Syrian government. Green is by, the one group of terrorists. The light green up here in the north, this would be Turkish control, and then, like the different shades, you have to check the key. But really, they're all just basically the terrorists the US and its allies have been backing. Yellow would be the Kurds, and they're kind of a mixed bag because some of them are working with the Syrian government and a lot of them are working with the US occupiers. Right here, this line between the red and the yellow, that's basically the Euphrates River. That the country is basically split along the Euphrates River. And if you zoom in here, you can see that the Syrian government does have a foothold on the other side of the river. They also have a foothold up here as well in the very northeast. And so the hope is that eventually the US will withdraw. The Kurds will be brought back under the Syrian government. That is honestly in their best interest to do so. And then these other regions will be crushed eventually. And because the Russian intervention and the fact that the Russian military is physically located in Syrian territory now, the chances of this ever sliding backwards or becoming another Iraq like in 2003 is very, very unlikely. And so patience will be the key for Syria. And if you want to know what's going on in Syria, you might not see things happening in the headlines, but it doesn't mean there aren't important things happening that you have to keep an eye on. Go to Syria Live Map and check it out. Or even Google News is, again, it's going to give you Western media, but that's okay because what the Western media wants you to think is happening in Syria can help you figure out, you can fill in the blanks yourself. You can read between the lines of what they're saying and kind of get the idea of what they're trying to do in Syria. So you could type in Syria in Google News and get all the Western headlines. You can come here to Syria Live Map. And then, of course, if something big happens, it'll be on the headlines of all the newspapers, including whichever ones you like to visit and look at online every day. So that's the video today. Syria is a very important conflict to keep an eye on. And what happens in Syria is going to give us an idea of what's going to happen in Iraq and Iran and Lebanon and everywhere else. So keep an eye on Syria. Don't forget about it. It was a hard war. It's a war that's still going on. It's a war that still needs people's attention and still needs activism to help the country and the people overcome what the US has done to it. So I'm going to leave it there for now. It's a topic that I'm going to revisit again often. If you thought this video was useful, please like and share it. To my Patreon patrons who make these videos possible every day, thank you very much. Everyone, please think about subscribing to my YouTube channel. It helps the channel grow. It's totally free to do, and I greatly appreciate that as well. And as always, thank you for watching.